Welcome to Construction Cashflow. I'm your host, Stu Davidson, and if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode.
We don't do any of that. We don't need any contracts. Everything's kind of a spit in a handshake. Well, they're subbies. They don't need that paperwork. No, they do. They absolutely do. So people think if you've got a CIS card, then you're automatically self-employed and there's no need to have a contract. And that's absolutely not true. Just because someone says they're a subbie or they say they're a sole trader, that doesn't mean you're self-employed. If you've got nothing written anywhere, a judge would make a decision, and they'll make a decision based on your actions. So the first error that I see when people don't have contracts, and they should have contracts, whether you're self-employing somebody, whether you've got them on a 0 hours contract, whether you're employing them, you always need to have something. And whatever you don't have is open for interpretation. And that's where you get all your issues. He's broken his leg. He's worked with me for a while, so I'm going to give him pay for the next 4 weeks. You've just treated this person like an employee, and guess what? You made them an employee. You don't employ self-employed people, you engage self-employed people, or you appoint self-employed people. Using that word employ, if that went to an employment tribunal, if you come up more employed than not, then you've employed that person. And if your intention is not to employ, that you don't ever do it accidentally. You want to make sure they're not stealing your client, they're not going behind your back and doing it cheaper, or they're not poaching your subbies or your employees. And that happens quite a bit. Someone offers to pay £1 more. Have something in place and make it quite clear. I expect you to work Monday and if you don't, these are the consequences. Be really clear and firm. So it's about attracting the people that have the same values as you.
In this show, we ask our guests to tell us their story, tell us a little bit about their background, how they got to where they are today, how they develop their product, their services, their ideas. And we discuss how that can affect construction cash flow and other areas of construction. And also to give us an idea of how we might make things better and give you a few tips and ideas to take away with you. And listen to the end where you'll find out more about them, more about our guests, about what motivates them, what inspires them, and hopefully that'll inspire you too. And always, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. In this episode, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Jemma Fairclough-Haynes. Jemma is the CEO of Chartered Employment Law. She regularly co-hosts the business radio show Business Bunker Extra and speaks nationally on employment law issues. She also provides her expert opinion to the media, including the Daily Mail, BBC Radio Kent and KMTV. She's a positive role model for Black, Asian and ethnic minority women. She also raises awareness around dementia and supports young enterprise, giving students the opportunity to gain work experience. So it's without further ado, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Jemma Fairclough-Haynes. Welcome to the show, Jemma, and how are you doing today?
Well, thanks very much for inviting me on, Stu. I'm doing very well, thank you.
So, Jemma, tell us about your story and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, gladly. My story, I guess, like most business owners, is a little bit unconventional in that I had never planned to be in business. So I don't come from a background where I knew lots of entrepreneurs or business people growing up, and it kind of really wasn't our way. But I worked for another organisation which also does employment law. And at the time, I worked from home, which was fantastic because before working from home was a thing. And it worked very well with my family situation. I also knew, I'd learned from a very early age from my parents that you treat everybody with dignity and respect. And that really served me. So often, we'd have law advocates who would treat the clerks a little bit rubbish. And I understood that the clerks were the bosses, really. The administrators were really your boss. You might say your name at the top of the paper, but they're the ones in control.
Been there.
So I had a really good relationship with our clerk who would allocate where I would be in terms of representing employers in tribunals. And he knew that at the time I had a young baby when I started this job. And he knew that I really tried to get places where I didn't have to stay overnight, so I could go and visit a client or represent a client in a tribunal in a day, there a day and back and go the next day. And because we had a good relationship and because I treated him well, he treated me well, and things were going brilliant. That was fine for a couple of years, but after a couple of years, I became more experienced at knowing about employment law. And so those more complex cases that businesses would have, they'd be like, but this one's a 3-day case in Wales, and really, Jemma's the best person for the job. And I understood that it was coming from a good place because we had such a good relationship. So, when Mike would say, I have to send you, that was fine. And I would kind of just enjoy a hotel breakfast and working, the joys of working away from home every now and then. The business that I was working for actually grew and changed quite a lot in that short period of time whilst I was there. And on one occasion, my big boss, he wasn't that big in stature, but my big boss, as in the organisational chart, he gave me a call and he said, Jemma, we're going to have to make some redundancies. And I thought, oh no, I've been made redundant once before. So I was quite worried. I didn't have savings. I didn't have that buffer. And he said to me, well, you won't be made redundant. I said, okay. He says, but I have to tell you because I'm going to have to put you at risk just because you're in the same job as others who might have been. And I was a bit scared. So I contacted somebody who I'd contacted previously, applied for a job years ago, and said, you didn't give me a job years ago because I didn't have any experience. Now I've got a bit of experience. Do you think you'll have a job for me? And I got this email saying the person who you're contacting has now left the business has been sold. Why don't you come in and have a chat with me, an exploratory chat? So I thought, I don't know what one of those is. So I ended up to have a chat with this guy. It turns out the exploratory chat was an interview. And he said to me, you're just not really good at selling. He said, like, your CV is rubbish. Fine, thanks. And then he said, have you ever thought about setting up your own business? And I just thought, if you don't want to give me the job, it's fine. I'm a big girl, I can take it, And he said, no, seriously, I'll rewrite the CV for you. I don't think you're the right person for this job. And he said, one of the reasons is when he asked me, well, how will you bring more business in? I went, I don't know. I'd never done that before. I just do the work. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get that job. He did rewrite my CV. My previous CV was rubbish because the thing he gave me back actually was much better. And I just thought, well, I'll wait and see what happens. And I wasn't made redundant, true to their word. Anyway, the next year came, everything was fine. They had made some people redundant. So then instead of going to Wales for 3 days, I'd find myself in Scotland for 5 days because they'd gotten rid of some of the other people who could have done these jobs. And all the while I'm getting better and more experienced at representing employers. So it was getting a bit tricky, but I would have stayed there. It still felt like a good life, company car, working from home when you can. And I got another call about the same time the following year saying, Jem, we're making redundancies. And I was like, oh. He says, but you won't be made redundant. And I said, He says, but again, we've got to put you at risk. So I said, oh, okay, fine. Well, I just started to learn about LinkedIn. at that stage, and my LinkedIn profile was awful. I had no picture, I hadn't filled it out properly. All my clients' opponents would use it against me. They'd be like, oh, the person who's representing you is rubbish. I wasn't rubbish, I just didn't know how to sell myself. I hadn't filled out this information on the LinkedIn properly. But I had connected with one guy who I'd beaten in tribunal one time, and because he said to me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and so he was my only connection. I just connected with him. So I thought, I'll send him a message. Remember him? Sent him a message. I said, oh, hi Tony, do you remember me? I beat you. And he says, have you got any jobs going? And he said, no, but I could give you a platform to start off on your own if you like. And I thought, no, I don't like. I want to know I'm getting paid on the 28th of each month. Thanks very much. But I did find it really strange that the second person, in a row had said to me, why don't you start off on your own? So I just, again, hung in there, thought, let's see what happens. And I wasn't made redundant. Anyway, another year comes along, again, similar sort of time. And in between that year, a lot of changes had happened. And because I'm getting busier, I felt like it was more difficult for me to give my all to the clients. I'm now going away for 2 weeks. Northern Ireland, Manchester, Birmingham, all over the shop. And it really wasn't as conducive with family life. And I'm still getting on really well with the clerk, Mike, but this is the best that he can do. Anyway, I got another call saying, making redundancies, but you won't be made redundant. And I thought, I don't know if that's true. So this time around, they did things a bit differently. They must have got burned, their fingers burned. And they said, this time around, we're going to ask people to re-interview for their jobs. And I just thought, I wonder what that would be like, how much voluntary. I was just wondering. So I sent an email, asked the question, how much is voluntary? No answer. Sent another email with a read receipt, how much is voluntary? Read, delivered and read, no answer. So I thought, okay, I'll wait till the interview. So I had the interview. They asked me the questions. It's all wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You're giving the right answers. And at the end of every interview, they always ask you the same question, which is, have you got any questions? So I said, yeah. How much is voluntary? And honestly, Stu, I was only asking. I was just asking. And they said, well, you don't need to know. And I said, well, you do need to know, because if it's a genuine redundancy, legally speaking, if you're not just trying to get rid of your troublemakers, you should at least consider voluntary redundancy. And the mood in the room just changed, and he said, how much do you want? Now, at that time, I'd forgotten all of my training. I do this for a living, draft up settlement agreements and work out how much employees are entitled to and what they're worth. I completely forgot, and then the silliest figure. And they just said, you need to be gone within 10 days. Oh, my goodness. This really wasn't my plan. So I was like, oh, okay. So in 10 days, my life changed. And I started to think about those other two people who I'd met. I said, well, why don't you just set up on your own? And my answer of no had always really been about job security. And then I thought, well, if I'm at risk of redundancy every year, where's the security? So I just thought, well, let's give it a try. My plan was I'll try it for a year. I'll try it for 12 months. I'll see what happens. It took me 6 months to get my first client. But after that, things gradually started to get better. Started working from home, working with businesses, advising them on employment law and HR. And it was quite hard to get clients initially because people don't know you. So there's not that known trust. And I didn't know anything about business. I didn't understand sales and marketing and all these other things. But over time, I got better and better. I did some networking, and, I learned that I'm quite good at speaking, evidently. So I did a couple of 10-minute presentations, and that would bring me business in. And essentially, 8 years later, I'm still here.
Hey.
And the business has grown. Yeah, business has grown to now, we're a team of 6 people. We're in an office. Not that that means that you're successful or not if you have an office, especially not these days. But I'm pleased to say we're working with business of all shapes and sizes. And the great thing is, when I first left my old employer, I was like, oh, I'm going to be just like you, but better. And now I'm nothing like them, but better.
Of course.
Yeah, because you learn to do things your way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it, Stu.
How fascinating. And the journey is amazing that you've gone from one redundancy to another. And it may be that those people saw something in you that could go out on your own, and you've got that confidence, and it's nice that you've allowed the universe to come in, and you've kind of flourished in other talents that you had and maybe wouldn't have normally exercised, like the public speaking, growing your business. And so in your business, what do you think the biggest lesson for you was in growing your business? What did you have to find out to get it going?
I had to find out everything, and I don't say that lightly. I really had to learn to ask questions and not to be afraid to ask questions. I'm not an expert in everything. There are lots of things I'm not an expert in. So I really had to learn about how to sell myself. Even when we think about that initial going for interviews and being told, well, your CV's not very good. But having spoken to you, you've got a lot more to offer. So this guy who I didn't know redrafted my CV based on a conversation that I'd had with him. And I think I carried that into business initially. I was a little bit shy. I didn't want to toot my own horn too much. A bit concerned about what people think. And so I had to learn that all from the get-go, really. Yeah,
amazing. And I think as entrepreneurs we'll go through that. I mean, I've gone through that. How do you sell yourself? How do you market product, services and ideas? And it's a difficult one. You kind of grow into it, and eventually it becomes part of who you are, doesn't it?
I was one of the most annoying. I think, oh gosh, if I'd met myself in year one, because I remember she's my friend now, Manjit. We met at a networking event, and I just thought you went around shoving business cards in people's faces. I didn't realise there was relationships that needed to be built. And she was one of these people, I had literally my box of business cards, and she was one of the ones that I shoved it under her nose, and she went, you've not even asked me my name or asked me what I do. You've not even tried to get to know me. And I was a bit like, oh, sorry. But that was good. It was good that she stopped me in my tracks, didn't hold it against me and tell me that I was a bit obnoxious. But I learned, I'm not like that anymore. You'd be pleased to know.
No, fantastic. No, you're very, very approachable and somebody who's easy to talk to. So you're growing your business, and so you've got employees now yourself? Yeah,
I've got employees and associates. So it's a hybrid model. We have employees in the office, an executive assistant. I've got someone who does our HR advice because we offer retained services. And I've realised quite quickly that I don't need to do all of that. There's also a letting go process that you have to learn in business, isn't there? Whether that's your outsourcing or your insourcing, eventually you have to let some things go, and so that was quite tricky for me to learn. And then last year we were getting busier and busier, and so I started then to grow the business even further, and we took on 3 extra associates around the country, so that because we serve people nationally, and we've got 2 international clients, so we're global, baby. So because we serve people nationally, and although we can do things by teams, sometimes a face-to-face, you just can't replace it. So it was great to have people dotted around the country to do that.
What type of clients do you generally work with?
Yeah, so we work with clients across industries, all sectors. We work with clients in construction, in hospitality, in the public sector, in the private sector. Our smallest clients tend to have about 5 employees. And we do ad hoc work, especially if you're taking on your first employee, like you want a contract or something. But we also work with clients that have got 2,500 employees. And it's quite interesting because, it doesn't really matter whether a business has been going for 2 years or 40 years. A lot of their problems are still the same.
Very interesting.
Yeah. The amount of times I've gone to businesses that are 60 years old, or let's say hundreds of years old, because it's been passed down through generations. And I start off with, okay, so can I see your contracts? I go, oh, we don't do any of that. We don't need any contracts. Everything's kind of a spit in a handshake. Well, they're subbies. They don't need that paperwork. No, they do. They absolutely do. So, we come in and we sort things out.
Hey, well, very interesting you mentioned subbies, because that leads me into one of my questions I wanted to ask you about. There are some large companies out there that employ thousands of people, but largely the people that construct and build things are subbies, and they employ subbies.
Yeah.
let's take an example of a bricklaying firm. There'll be a subcontractor, but all their bricklayers will be self-employed. So, and I would hazard a guess that most of them don't have a contract with their self-employed tradesmen.
Yeah.
Do you see that do you see that often in the construction industry?
Very
sector?
often, yeah. And I think the thing is that people think if you've got a CIS card, then you're automatically self-employed and there's no need to have a contract, and that's absolutely not true. Just because someone says they're a subby, or they say they're a sole trader, or even if they've got that UTR number that you get from the tax, your unique tax number, that doesn't mean you're self-employed. It might do for tax purposes, but it doesn't always mean that for employment law purposes. And actually, if you've got nothing written anywhere, then if it push came to shove, a judge would make a decision, and they'll make a decision based on your actions. So the first error that I see when people don't have contract, and they should have contracts, whether you're self-employing somebody, whether you've got them on a 0 hours contract, whether you're employing them, you always need to have something. And it doesn't have to be 20 pages long. I think that's the thing that scares people. It doesn't have to be 20 pages long. It doesn't have to be something people don't understand. It doesn't have to use super big words. It can be in an email. It doesn't even have to be on paper. But you do have to have you should have something, because whatever you don't have is open for interpretation, and that's where you get all your issues. So that's the first thing, is not having anything in writing. And then the second thing is either having something in writing and ignoring it. So, we talk about those smaller businesses where they build relationships with these tradesmen. And so they'll be like, you're self-employed, so you're not entitled to sick pay and holiday pay, but he's broken his leg. He's worked with me for a while, so I'm going to give him pay for the next 4 weeks. You've just treated this person like an employee, and guess what? You made them an employee. And it's because it comes from a good place most of the time. Do you know what I mean? So that's one of the things that is a problem. And then also it's about language. So like you just said, they employ subbies. You don't employ subbies, employ self-employed people. You engage self-employed people, or you appoint self-employed people. So using that word employ, if that went to an employment tribunal, when they start looking at all of these, it's not, that alone won't tip it over the edge, but when they start looking at all of these different things together, and they do a test based on 7 things, if you come up more employed than not, then you've employed that person. And then you're liable for all things such as you didn't have a contract, you didn't give them holiday pay, you might have not treated them the way they should have done. So I would say just take the advice first. So at least if your intention is not to employ, that you don't ever do it accidentally.
That's really amazing, fantastic advice. And there's me using that language, and we all do it, and we don't really give it much thought. So with the contract that a carpentry company, an M&E company, or a bricklaying company might use to engage one of their subbies, is it something, so like the contracts that we have between the subcontractor and the contractor, we feel that it needs to be like a project management tool where it's always open. Everybody needs to know what each clause understands and what their rights and obligations are under that contract. Would that ring true for the contract that engages the carpenter and the bricklayer?
Yeah. Keep things as simple as possible. So our motto is clear and uncomplicated. We'll never use legal jargon unless we have to. Because what's the point? Nobody understands it. Most of it's Latin anyway. So you want to use language that you understand, which is you'll turn up at this time. If things go to pot, you're liable, or I'm liable, or if I'm not happy, I'll sever the contract with a week's notice or with 30 days. I mean, the thing you really want as well with tradespeople is for them not to steal and I don't mean tools and like tangible things. You want to make sure they're not stealing your client, they're not going behind your back and doing it cheaper, or they're not poaching your subbies or your employees. And that happens quite a bit. Someone offers to pay £1 more, and then you've got nothing to go back on because you've had nothing in writing that said you can't do that in the first place, and you're relying on people's good nature, and sometimes they don't have it. So
I know where you're coming from, because I've had it done to me. So yeah, and I suppose a lot of people have. And I do know that it is on trust. It's, oh, I've got my mates coming to work with me, you know, and they don't actually. And I see a lot from main contractors, you know, oh, you haven't got enough blokes on site. Where's your blokes today? They haven't turned up. And there is a bit of a culture in certain areas where the guys won't. You can't get them in on a Monday. You can't get them in on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I just hazard a guess that they probably haven't got the right contract in place, or if they have, they're not implementing it on an ongoing basis.
That's exactly it. As you say, they either haven't got it in place or they're not implementing it. I see that like 9 times out of 10, to be honest with you, Stu. Have something in place and make it quite clear. I expect you to work Monday and if you don't, these are the consequences. You know, whether that's, well, we won't engage you anymore, whether that's, well, we'll cause you a fine. If you delay our project, if you delay what we're doing, then that cost might be passed back onto you, or some of that cost might be passed back onto you. Be really clear and firm. And the thing is, I think with lots of businesses, they're scared that if they do these things, people won't want to come and work for them, and then they won't be able to find anybody anyway. But actually, you find you get that mutual respect because you do things properly. So you pay on time, you know, you
exactly.
Treat them well, you let them start at a certain time, you finish on time, and then you build that trust and respect. And it's about like value systems, isn't it? So it's about attracting the people that have the same values as you to work with you.
That's a very good point. I think same value systems, and setting out what your values are, what your mission statement is, so that everybody knows why they're there and what they're doing, and that they've got common goals.
Yeah.
That's a very, very, very good point. One of the other things in terms of construction cash flow that I've been looking at and discussing really with other guests is how we might go to a direct payments approach. So it could be a developer direct payments down the line, where the contracts essentially remain the same and the approvals for payment are made, but the payments are actually made direct to the subcontractor or the carpenter, the bricklayer.
Yeah.
You know, which has its advantages. I think it needs a change of culture and attitude, but it means that you would need, in those circumstances, you would need a contract in place.
Yeah.
But it does mean that the subcontractor and the contractor haven't got to worry so much about robbing Peter to pay Paul for their cash flow down the supply chain. That's taken care of, and so they can just use their expertise to build the thing and concentrate. Because you know, we're handling, contractors and subcontractors handle, you know, the money that goes through their business. 80% of it is other people's money.
Yes.
They're just passing it on. So they're just passing it on. So why give them the burden of passing on that?
It's like VAT, isn't it? You're just a glorified tax collector.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know another thing that I don't know whether you've seen this go on as well on sites. If you've got bricklaying firm, let's use bricklaying again. They may be on a 54-day payment, but the guys want paying every week. Then they want a sub. Oh, can you give me a sub to the weekend? You know, so all of this going on, and it plays havoc with cash flow and with contracts.
Yeah, you've got to be really clear, and it is difficult. I mean, particularly in this industry, as you say, you might be on a 54-day payment, but you might not get paid for 65 days. So just because you've got these payment terms, you know, with whoever you've got your contract with, unfortunately, doesn't mean that they're going to pay on time either.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that is a challenge, really. But I think, again, it's about being realistic and setting out expectations and saying, look, this is what I'm working with. This is how I can do it. Are you on board with that or not? You know, I can't just provide you a subby for the weekend, and I can't just switch to paying you for the week or giving you a top up in advance, or that's not how this business works.
Exactly. Yeah. So where could, if because there are subcontractors that listen into the podcast, contractors and other professionals, Where could they, because I should imagine a lot of them are thinking, yeah, I haven't got those contracts in place. Where do I start? Yeah, how could they kind of contact you or get more advice around the contracts that they need to put in place?
Really easily, you can contact us via our website, which is www.orchardemploymentlaw.co.uk. There's a contact us form on there, or if you fancy sending us an email, the email address is on there and the phone number as well. And it doesn't matter where you are in the UK. We can do a lot of these things online or over the telephone. Don't feel like you've got to use any special language, So yeah, just give us a call and ask how you do this, and we'll help you with that.
That's fantastic. So maybe a top tip for somebody who was a subcontract, had a small business, he's come off the tools, he's now running his business, he's got 4 or 5, he engages 4 or 5 subcontractors for him. What would be your top tip for him, not knowing where to go? What would be his first step?
So my top tip would be get the documentation in place, get a contract in place. The good thing is you only need one, really. Once you've got one, and we would do that, and I imagine lots of other businesses do that, we give you one in a Word copy and a PDF. So you can then roll that out again and again and again and again. Stick to it. I know you said one top tip, but yeah, well, here we go. And I would say, just from a business perspective, not from an employment law perspective, is try and come away from the tools. It's easy to get drawn in, and make sure you're looking at the business. If you want to stay sustainable in that business, that you're looking at your cash flow, you're looking at your people management, you're looking at your marketing. Really take that time. I try and take so my Fridays, what I call my focus Fridays. I work from home on a Friday so that I can do that on the business stuff. And it's tempting to just keep on working in the business, but you really need to take your foot off the pedal a little bit sometimes.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic advice. Really is. So, Jemma, have you time for the quick fire round?
Yeah, let's go for it. Okay.
So first question, how do you start your day?
Oh, how do I start my day? Recently I started drinking water, which doesn't sound like a big thing, but it's a big thing for me. So I start my day with a glass of water. I don't drink tea or coffee. I hope that doesn't put anybody off, but I don't drink hot drinks. So I normally start with a glass of water. I come into work earlier than my team members do, because I like to look at what's going on for the day and prepare. And that really gives me a good start.
When are you most productive?
In the evenings, funny enough. Actually, I'm most productive in the evenings. I think when I haven't got to do in the business stuff, that's when I'm most productive. Or even, if I'm being honest, I'm most productive when I've had a break. So it's tempting to keep on working all the time, not take a day's break, not take a holiday. But if I'm being truthful to myself, I'm most productive when I've even had 2 days off, like on a Monday. I love Mondays, one of those strange people. Or if I've had a week's holiday, I come back like, Yeah.
What's something new happening in your life right now?
Right now, I have joined the gym. I am not a fitness person, but it's more out of necessity than wanting to. I decided, it's getting a little bit difficult. Lifting those shopping bags is getting a bit hard. So I'm going to the gym 5 times a week, which is a challenge. Yeah.
What does adventure look like to you?
Adventure is doing something that pushes me, that leaves me a little bit nervous but a little bit excited. I'm a feet on the ground kind of person, so you'll never see me scaling roofs, but I'm always looking for that next challenge in other ways. So whether that's talking to more people or trying a new skill, learning a new instrument, that's my idea of adventure.
What thing would you love to do that might surprise your friends and family?
I'd love to do a lion walk, actually. So I've been seeing people doing that, walking with lions. So providing the lions are not ill-treated and they're not, dosed up, I'd love to do that. That will surprise my friends, because I've had a lizard, or my daughter's had a lizard for 8 years, and I've never held it. But I want to walk with lions.
Name a challenge you overcame that changed your life.
Probably the business, I have to say. I overcame putting myself out there, that changed my life. I think it is one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Who or what inspires and motivates you?
I read a lot. I do a lot of reading. So I wouldn't say there's any one person, but I love an autobiography. And I think when I read those autobiographies and I almost live those challenges and overcoming through those stories, that really inspires me.
What does success mean to you?
Success means being better than I was yesterday. I'm one of those people that I don't have grandiose goals. World domination would be nice. But as long as I'm better than yesterday, I feel like that's a successful day.
And final question, what advice would you give to your young self?
My advice would be to keep going, girl. It's going to be okay.
Hey, amazing. Well, Jemma, it's been an amazing interview. I've really enjoyed it. Some real golden nuggets in there, particularly the strong advice on engaging subcontractors. Been amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to Construction Cashflow. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so you never miss an episode. And remember, the faster cash flows, the faster wealth grows. If you enjoy this episode and you love the show, please do give us your review.